Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. I appreciate you so much, man, for tuning into today's episode. If it's your first time listening, I've been doing this show for a while. I got into the industry in 2012, started with my blog, crowdcrux.com. I've written a couple of books out there, got the Kickstarter launch formula, kickstarterforum.org. We have a YouTube channel, etc. And the reason why I started this show was kind of out of frustration. Like, there's so many pundits out there, I feel like, who will just share like the top 5 things to do if you want to do this, right? But when it comes to like in-depth knowledge and really understanding what's happening behind the scenes, when it comes to it, I feel like the only way to figure that stuff out is to ask people, is to get inside their head, is to really understand what's happening behind the scenes, and to kind of have that insider scoop, if you will. And I got frustrated because there aren't any good books out there on this when I was just getting started, and I had to write one of the books, right? The Kickstarter launch formula. So I was so freaking just angry and pissed off and frustrated. And what also I think was underneath that was that people speak in code. And by that, I mean, sometimes people will say something like, you need to have a big crowd, right? Or you need to do this, or you need to do that. And my question was always like, what do you mean, right? People speak in such glittering generalities that it's so hard to actually figure out what you got to do in order to be successful. Or you talk to one person and one person says, you need to build a tribe, right, to be successful. You talk to another person who's like, dude, I didn't have a tribe, I just launched this thing and it took off. Which one is right? And that's really the nuance, I think the gray area that I try to explore on today's show. But I also love having other opinions and voices on the show. And that's where today's podcast episode comes in, is sort of an emerging voice, someone who's run a couple of other campaigns. I had on this show to share her thoughts on how to run a successful campaign. And I hope you take a lot of good value away from today's episode. But I just kind of want to share a little bit about that the reason why I have on so many different flavors and subsections of crowdfunding when it comes to like comic books, board games versus technology gadgets versus a live web series, etc., design products. It's because I want to figure out what's happening behind the scenes. And a lot of the times when people say something, like they say, oh yeah, I just did this, I look at their stats, or I start to go through their page and I'm like, really? Did you really? Because there's always the story that they want out there publicly. And then there's like the story that's happening behind the scenes. And I'm so grateful that most of the entrepreneurs who come on the podcast today are very transparent. Today's guest, I think, is a great example of being transparent. But I think it's really my duty in this industry is to try to extract as much information as possible for you, so you can go out there and you can have a successful crowdfunding campaign. The reason why I named my blog Crowd Crux is I really want to be the crux and understanding not only what goes on well with a project, but also what can tank it. And to be that center point of helping you navigate this crazy terrain, figure out what you got to focus on, and be able to articulate that. Because it's one thing to be like, I think, an expert. It's another to be able to articulate and share with other people what they have to do in order to be successful. I've been thinking about that recently when I was, wondering, why is it that so many of like the top athletes are not good teachers? Or you have someone who is a PhD, right, in college, and he is teaching for a little bit, and like the students hate him. He's so boring, right? He doesn't know how to teach people because he's at such a high level that he can't relate with the everyday ordinary person. It's called the curse of knowledge. You can look that up. But I just kind of was thinking about that today, and I want to share that with you, the reason why I'm so passionate about this subject. Without further ado, let's get into today's podcast. We're talking with one of the experts in the industry, who is the founder of Crush Crowdfunding. It's coming up right after this. This podcast episode is sponsored by The Gadget Flow. The Gadget Flow reaches over 28 million people, and they've been around since 2012. They are Indiegogo and Kickstarter experts. They featured over 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns, and if you have a technology or design campaign, it is a great platform to generate awareness and get backers. You can check them out at thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
Thanks, Sal. I'm really glad to be here.
Can we get started maybe telling the audience a little bit about your story and what got you interested in crowdfunding?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I was just coming out of grad school, actually, And I was working at a startup as a marketing manager, and we were looking at ways to just launch a new product to the market. And crowdfunding was one of those channels, one of those options, one of those opportunities. And we kind of dug into it, and I was like, wow, this is super cool. This is basically at the, you get to meet and see new products and new projects and new ideas coming to the market all the time. When you're working with crowdfunding, you're seeing products that, are new, that novel, that everyone is like, oh, wow, this is going to change the way people look at the world. This is going to change the way people solve problems and produce solutions. And so that's kind of my first foray into crowdfunding. And from there, I started working at a crowdfunding agency, and just launched projects and products, everything from like drones to smart remotes to phone cases. And I've just been doing it ever since because I just love working with entrepreneurs. I love being their confidant, their sounding board, just kind of going into projects with like crazy ideas and asking audiences, understanding how products work, how products, get made. And it's just been a crazy whirlwind ever since.
Which agency were you working with?
I was actually at an agency called Rain Factory.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. What made you decide to go out on your own?
That's a great question. So I actually went in-house at a smart tech company pretty much in the San Francisco Bay Area to launch their products on crowdfunding too. They were looking to just launch like 5 to 6 products on crowdfunding to just pretty much increase their SKU numbers, so that because we had bigger plans to go into places like Best Buy and things like that. And so I went to work there, launched their 5-6 products on crowdfunding. And the company got so big that we were just focused more on just B2B. And so I realized that, hey, like my interest and my passion pretty much lies with working directly with entrepreneurs, with launching new products rather than in the B2B side, where things get really, honestly, kind of slower and you can talk less to the audience in a way. And so that's why I shifted my focus back to crowdfunding and started Crush Crowdfunding, and just recently started another company actually called Meeple Marketing to just help game designers market their games.
What would you say is, your passion with the process, of either from beginning to end or raising money? What's your passion? Like, what do you really enjoy doing?
Oh, that's a great question. From my perspective, I've always been interested in human psychology. Ever since I was a child, I was always interested in what people were thinking, what people, what makes them tick, what makes them do certain actions, and just how you get people to act and do things, right? I always ask people questions, what their life is like, why they chose certain things. And that's kind of what drew me towards marketing and towards crowdfunding in general. Just because you get to really work with the audience, understand who they are, what their dreams and aspirations are, and why and how your new idea can fit into those dreams and aspirations.
When it comes to these projects, what would you say like your specialty is, or the role that you're playing?
Yeah, so when it comes to my specialty, I actually have a background in marketing. I went to graduate school for marketing, and I've just been learning about marketing ever since my dad was an entrepreneur too. So I've learned about marketing from him too. And so it's from the marketing side, definitely marketing and how that fits with your products. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they have a product, right? They're like, okay, wow, this is like a cool idea that I have. This is a cool idea that I've thought about, and I just want to launch it to the market. But there's that middle section where you have to figure out where your product and your audience meet and how to actually talk to your audience. And there, I think, is like the sweet spot of where marketing kind of meets with the amazing ideas that entrepreneurs have. And I think that's the most exciting part of crowdfunding, and the part that I'm most passionate about, because it's like, hey, how do we name this thing, right? What do people respond to when you create a new product, when you create a new feature, when you introduce new benefit to your idea? Mm-hmm. How do we even price this thing, right? Hey, if everyone is pricing at $20, can we price this at $79, right? Yes or no? What are the reasons? What are the pros? What are the cons for that? If people are doing just red doodads. Can we make a blue one?
Doodad.
Yeah, doodad. Yeah, can we make a blue one and like make it stand out? And that's the most exciting part because it combines the incredible ideas of entrepreneurs and just asking an audience and knowing your audience and just understanding what makes them tick.
When it comes to this year with crowdfunding, like what do you think is really working well to get funding for these different projects?
Yeah. So again, as we know, things are hard this year, right? And even on Kickstarter, there's like less entrepreneurs launching. There's, I think, 35% decrease in launches on crowdfunding itself. However, we're seeing that there's still support for these campaigns that are launching. And I think, again, it just comes down to the two core things that just make or break a crowdfunding campaign, the product and the audience. If you can know your audience, who they are, where to talk to them, how to talk to them, what conversations to be having with them, you'll know their problem and you're going to be able to produce a product that solves that problem. So, for example, again, right now I'm like working a lot with game designers. And so what we talk about a lot is pretty much like, okay, with your game, you have to be playtesting all the time. You're playtesting online now because you can't really go out, but playtest and just figure out like, hey, what mechanics work? What mechanics don't work? What mechanics make, one person kind of dominate the game, right? And when you figure that out, you can hone that product to the audience that has been, the most receptive to your game.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So basically getting a sense of how real people are interacting with the prototype.
Yeah, exactly. And just how real people are interacting with, how people are responding to it. Because at the end of the day, crowdfunding is really just about making something that people love and want to prepay for, right? And if throughout the process you're including them in the creation process, you're including them in the ideas and kind of the changes, the evolution of it, and they're like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted all along, right? Since January to now, right? Like in the past 6 months, you've made this game, you've answered my questions and made changes along the way that, I recommend it. Like this, like there's no way I'm going to say no to it because it's literally everything I want. And that's how I think crowdfunding is still going strong when it comes to the backer like numbers and funding amount, just because these companies that are still launching, these campaigns that are still launching, they've done this product and audience kind of back and forth throughout the pre-launch process.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to that pre-launch process, like there are a lot of avenues to go out there when it comes to social media channels. Like you have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, like so many different ones. What do you think should be someone's focus going into the campaign? Should they be on all of these? Should they be on one of them for sure? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it goes back to kind of the audience again, right? Like, for example, with some particular campaigns, people love being in Facebook groups. People are open to just like chatting on Facebook groups about this particular product. For example, another campaign that I was working on last year, it was an online supermarket. And everyone who was in that demographic for that online supermarket that launched, they were open to communicating and talking and just conversing about the supermarket on Facebook. And they were all there anyway, right? They were always there conversing. And so we had really great conversations with about like 500-600 people in the group leading up in the months leading up to the launch, so that when it did come to launch, everyone was ready to back the campaign. In other kind of like types of campaigns, it's just understanding who your audience is with things like board games, right? Everyone's honestly kind of on Discord. A lot of people are on Discord talking about games. A lot of people are on different like Twitch channels talking about games. So it really depends on the type of audience that you have and where people are having these conversations.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to the projects that you've worked on, looking back and helping people, is there a moment that like stands out in your mind that you're really proud of? Maybe something you did for a campaign, or an amount that was funded, or just any kind of result like that?
Well, there's funding amounts, right? Like, hey, when you help a client get to $1 million, you're like, awesome. This is crazy, right? Like, yeah, I've helped clients get to like millions of dollars, but I think the best thing is just like being by their side throughout the process, right? Like, because in the process, I'm like literally welcomed into their world, right? This is their deepest passion. They wake up and they think about this. They go to sleep thinking about this. Like, I get to be privy to just like insecurities that they have about the success of their product. I get to be their confidant, their sounding board when they have ideas just like racing around their head. And that I think is like the best part, because I get to be by their side when they're planning things and things crumble down and we like brainstorm what to do. It's kind of an insane rush. I am a competitive person. I play a lot of soccer. I play a lot of board games. I'm pretty competitive. So like this kind of rush, just being with entrepreneurs and just like fighting obstacles that come in our way is kind of the best part.
Okay, very cool. As it relates to like crowdfunding, I think a lot of people that are kind of in that beginning stage where, let's just say they have the prototype, they're getting some good feedback on it, and they're wondering, I know what to do, like basics, okay, do a pre-launch, build up social media. What can they do to really put their campaign on like a whole other level, right? And to really make it like a 2.0 experience. Do you have any thoughts about that? Like totally leveling up, like you mentioned, being hyper competitive, like rather than just being a part of the army, like being a part of the special forces, like how do they really level up their campaign?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it's all about getting people to see your project, right? All these campaigns that you see on Indiegogo, all these campaigns that you see on Kickstarter, right? It's about attention. The ones that raise millions of dollars, the ones that have tens of thousands of backers, it's about attention. And I think it comes down to the marketing part of it, right? And to quote unquote win, to be in the special forces, pretty much, like, yeah, you have to have a good product, but you also have to make sure to be able to get attention. And people don't really think about marketing in terms of attention, but that's essentially what that is. It's how you get attention to your project. You can do things like pay for attention and go to things like, run advertising. You can run giant, huge campaigns for advertising and draw millions of eyes to your campaign, right? And then get attention in that way. Because the more eyes you have in your campaign, the more backing you're going to get, assuming like a more than 0% conversion rate on your campaign page. You can pay for things like Google ads. You can pay for things like YouTube ads. You can pay for, banner ads in different places, right? So you can get attention in a paid way. Or some people can get attention in a non-paid way and do it more organically, like joining in on conversations on like Facebook, doing things like showcasing their project on like some third-party review site, right? So there's different ways to get attention, and that attention and the amount of attention that you can get towards your campaign is what kind of separates the smaller campaigns from the bigger campaigns.
I've had a lot of listeners over the years who will come back and say like, Sal, I did everything right. I did everything you should. We got attention, we got traffic, but it didn't convert into anything. And it's almost like this frustration and this feeling of like, why didn't it work? Do you have any thoughts on how to improve conversion rates or how to make sure that kind of converts into pledges?
Yeah. And so when I think about conversion rates, I think about it in kind of like a funnel format, right? Like the upside down pyramid. At the top of the funnel, it's just like people. And then it's people who are a little more interested in your project, a little more interested in your project. And then when you get to the bottom of the funnel, it's people who actually like pre-order your project. And when we're thinking about conversion rates, sure, some people just think about right at the bottom of the funnel where you get to the campaign page, whether it's on Kickstarter, whether it's on Indiegogo, and then you send people to the page and then they don't buy. Some people are just like, hey, that's just a conversion problem, but not really. You have to think about it kind of like in a very holistic manner, right? Like, hey, what's happening at the top of funnel? Who am I actually pulling into my campaign, right? Am I pulling in the right people to my campaign? Maybe I assume that it's 40-year-old women who's going to want this product, but actually it's like 30-year-old men who are going to want this. So I'm pulling people from the wrong places to come to this page, and that's why they're not converting, and that's why you're not making any progress with your project, right? So that's kind of like the top of funnel thing that a lot of people kind of forget. But when it comes to like on your campaign page, I actually was going to write an article about this after this call with you, Sal, is actually you need that credibility, you need that social proof. There's a lot of things you can do when you get the right traffic to your page to get that social proof. You can't just like throw spaghetti on the wall and just hope that it sticks to the wall, right? You need like nails or something on the wall just to make sure that it stays there.
Stick that spaghetti with those nails.
Yeah, right. You gotta stick that spaghetti. Yeah, so at the bottom of the funnel, when you're on your page, when the traffic is actually coming to your page, like, is your design good? Do you look legit? Firstly, right? No one's gonna like want to spend money, prepay for a product that isn't made when it looks like it's been hacked together by like a 2-year-old, right? Do you have like third party, like people just talking about your project saying, wow, this is really cool. Like it can be friends and family testimonials. It can be like some press journalist that's like talked about you earlier or something. It can be, any of that stuff. Are you funded really early? Because a lot of people just aren't really keen on backing projects that aren't funded early because they're like, hey, wait, is something wrong with this campaign? Like what's going on here? So there's a lot of different things you can do on your campaign page at the bottom of that funnel too, that can get people to convert and get people to be backers. So again, I think it's a more holistic problem rather than just like, hey, what's happening on the page? But like, hey, you're getting the right audience, talking to the right people, saying the right things, talking about it in the right way, and then think about your page.
Let's just say like if you're in the middle of a campaign and you got some funding, like you got like $4,000 or something, but you're really trying to get towards like 15K or even 20K, right? And you got the people and the page, like, you got some funding, but you're kind of wondering, like, should you quit the campaign and do another one and figure out what didn't work? Should you keep plowing along and try to figure it out as you go? For someone who's like in the middle and kind of stalling, what do you think they should do at that point in time? Are you looking for help with the fulfillment side of your rewards on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or any other crowdfunding website? Fulfillrite is literally the gold standard when it comes to crowdfunding reward fulfillment. These guys will help you ship out your products, your packages, your orders to all of your customers and your backers. They've been working in this industry for a really long time. I totally vouch for their services, and they'll even do things like answer simple questions for you on fulfillment and shipping and figuring out how to get your products into the hands of your customers in the easiest way possible. If you're interested in learning more about them, you can go to fulfillrite.com or crowdcrux.com/fulfillrite, and that will take you to them. Again, that is FULFILLRITE.com.
Yeah, good question. A lot of people honestly contact me in the middle of that campaign and have those exact questions, right? Like, hey, I'm like 10 days in and I'm like a third of the way funded. Like, what do I do? Hey, I'm like 20 days in, I have $2,000. Like, what do I do? Right. And, there's a lot of opinions about this, but from what I think is that a lot of people kind of think it's taboo to stop and try again. I think it's taboo in society to think about failure and to talk about failure and to talk about not being able to do it, not being able to make it. And I think that we need to talk about that because it's okay to stop, figure out exactly what's happening that's right and what needs to be improved on and start again. There's so many examples in crowdfunding where someone realizes, hey, we can't do this. This is not the best way to kind of like put our marketing dollars. This is not the best way to present the product. This is not the best way or best time even to launch this thing. And they stop the campaign and they come back with the learnings and just redo it again and get the success. Because a lot of the time when a campaign doesn't meet its funding goal, it's again a problem of getting the right people, the right audience, and the right amount of it to your campaign. So there's definitely something that you can do better for next time. And so again, if people are like in the middle of the campaign and they're like stalled, no one's there, they're like quite far from their goal, I would say, like stop trying to make it work. And it's okay to like not succeed the first time around. Just take your campaign off, like see, hey, where's the traffic coming from? Where are you getting the highest conversion rates? What are people actually saying about your project? Ask every single backer that you have, like, hey, what do you think we can improve on? What do you think could be better? Like maybe it's just the positioning. Sometimes positioning something as, a new standalone versus an expansion, like it is a completely different perception of the game, right? Or of the product.
For people that are live, do you have any resources or promotional companies or agencies that you recommend that they work with to help get the word out?
Yeah, so it a lot of the times it depends on budget, right? A lot of people have insane budgets. Some people have like hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on advertising for the campaign, and that's great. Like invest in an agency that charges that much. Other people have, smaller budgets, and you can work with freelancers. Like that's completely fine. I think there's just different agencies for different like products and also budgets, right? Because every agency like concentrates and focuses on very different things.
So are there any that you would recommend?
For if you're like on Kickstarter, for example, the biggest one that does ads on Kickstarter during the campaign would be Jello. They're a company based in Israel. Ido's a great guy, and they have a great tech that just kind of promotes projects to a huge list of lookalike audiences that they have. Every campaign they work on, pretty much the science is like, hey, the more campaigns you work on, the more lookalike audiences we have. And if you have a product in this particular category, if it's like, I don't know, like a smart grill or something, I think I recently saw a grill. Like if it's a grill, I'm sure we have a lookalike audience for people who want to buy grills, right? And so since they have so much data and so many lookalike audiences, they're kind of the big powerhouse when it comes to ads on Kickstarter.
Okay, so Jelp is a good one. What are your thoughts on some of these other ones like Super Backers or the Gadget Flow or some of those more like promotional companies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think promotional companies can work, right? They can work. But I think there's caveats to promotional companies. People think that, hey, if I just put my name out on Backer Club, on Gadget Flow, on Super Backer, or all these other backer crowdfunding audience like places, they're instantly going to get funded. And that's not the case. I think that everyone needs to do that work beforehand to get their own audience to the crowdfunding campaign, their own crowd to actually get the ball rolling, and then activating those other third-party sites like you were mentioning, like Agitflow, Superbacker, Backer Club, all these things, because these people in those lists, they know crowdfunding. They know campaigns that are like not, they know campaigns that didn't do the work before, and they can tell campaigns did or did not do the work before, right? If you come and have a thing on Gadget Flow and you have 0% funding, and then you get Gadget Flow audience coming to your audience, coming to your project, no one's going to back it because they're seasoned backers. They know that you didn't do the work beforehand, and you're just kind of like hope marketing right now, right? And also with these types of third-party promotions, I also want to consider kind of like product fit too, product market fit. Like when you're thinking about Gadget Flow, these people are just backing pretty much, it's all just like tech, right? Hardware tech. In other categories, like if you're in the kind of the comics category, if you're in like the theater category, it's not going to be the type of audience that you're looking for, right? However, if you're trying to look at things like let's see, BackKit, right? BackKit has sure, they're like a pledge manager, but they've also kind of built out the promotional aspects too. BackKit, for example, has a huge game list. So if you have a board game or like a video game, sure, go to BackKit. Don't go to Gadget Flow. So it really is about fit of your project with that third promotional party, and also your effort beforehand.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I've been getting a lot of questions recently. What would you say is like the difference between BackerKit and CrowdAwks in the campaigns you have experience with?
Honestly, like a lot of these pledge managers, they offer the same services, right? They like help you, take your backer information. They help figure out how to do all this like fulfillment stuff. They also help upsell and things like that. A lot of it, functionality wise, they're quite similar. A lot of the time it comes to pricing, right? BackKit is the more premium pricing. There's CrowdAwks, there's other things like Pledgebox, there's GameFound, there's all these other things too, that people can consider. But ultimately, it's really kind of the pricing.
Well said. Okay, so when it comes to the campaign here, I think I'd be remiss if I wasn't to ask you about the video, right? Do you have any tips on the pitch video?
Yeah. Videos they're kind of like a tough nut to crack because like just recently I was looking at a campaign and they had like a 1 minute video and they had a 70% like view through rate. And I was like, wow, hey, that's pretty cool. Because typically everyone's like, hey, you should have a 2 to 2.5 minute video. It should, talk about the product right in the first 5 seconds because if people have short attention spans, right? If they don't see it for the first 5 seconds, they're going to navigate away. Or like with, if you run it on ads, something happens within the first 5 seconds, right? So anyway, so a lot of the like, hey, this is what you should do with videos is already out there, right? Already out there, you talk about a product, things like that. But I think there's very new ways that we're all consuming video and we're all watching and engaging with these videos that I think that it's about time that crowdfunding has like new and novel ways to present ideas. I don't believe that 2 to 2.5 minutes is necessarily needs to be the ideal timeline anymore for a video. Because if you get someone to watch to the end of the video, it's like more likely that they're probably gonna be a backer for your campaign because they're actually interested, right? So videos they're a tough nut to crack because the people.
So do you think it should be? Do you think it should be around a minute?
Well, that's the thing. I think that shorter is kind of sweeter right now in a sense because when you're looking at ads, right? I worked as an ad manager in my previous life. When you're looking at ads, the short 6 to 7 second video ads and like GIF ads and like graphic ads are the ones that are getting the most engagement and the most clicks and the most conversions when you're looking on Facebook, when you're looking on Instagram right now, right? So like short is sweet. And if we're using that as like a test platform for what works and what's actually getting people to like something or understand something or be interested in something, then it seems like right now shorter is sweeter.
Okay. So basically be succinct and to the point and almost making your pitch video like an ad that you would see on Facebook or Instagram and those types of ones you come across.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the hard part though, because a lot of these videos that, a lot of entrepreneurs, create, they sometimes are like 5 to 7 minutes long. And I'm like, hey guys, this is probably too long because people don't have that long of an attention span, right? And so getting it to be short, concise, and also still make your point, that's going to be the tough part. And I think video creators are going to have a lot of fun trying to figure this out.
What do you think the role storytelling plays in the campaign?
Oh, huge. Storytelling is huge because like your whole crowdfunding campaign is pretty much narrative, not just on the campaign page itself, but just the whole entire process from when you have the idea all the way to when you're funded and actually when you deliver, right? It's a story, right? Hey, I'm this person who is living in a state in America that doesn't have access to this and that, but I've created this cool new idea because it provides me access to that thing, although I'm far away from other people. Right? Like that itself is that creation story is a story that someone should share when they go onto crowdfunding. Right. So, yeah.
So basically the story is kind of what I guess makes the campaign relatable or.
Yeah, absolutely. The story, the founder and the story behind the founder, the story behind why they created that product. One of my favorite things, it wasn't on crowdfunding, but one of my favorite things to talk about is kind of the history of the potato peeler. Typically, the potato peeler was like this like really hard metal thing that when you gripped it in your hand, it just hurt because it just like stabbed into your hands. But then this person, like his wife had arthritis and he was like, hey, I think that we can do better because his wife couldn't grab it. Her arthritic hands just couldn't hold the potato peeler. And so he worked with like an arthritic foundation and created the modern potato peeler, which is, if you go look in your like kitchen drawer, it's like a pretty big kind of handle you hold in your hand. And so it kind of fills out your hand, and there's no sharp points in the handle part, right? And so that itself is a story, right? It's a story that gets people to be like, wow, that is really cool. Like, you had this pain point, you had this problem, and you went out and you like failed and tried and did all these different prototypes and like tested and talked to so many people. And then you created this cool thing that now everyone can use with ease, right? That itself is a story that people will rally behind, that people will support. And that transformed into a crowdfunding page, a crowdfunding campaign, the pre-launch narrative is going to get people to just like rally behind the idea.
Yeah, I really like that story too, because it kind of underscores the fact that the person who created it, they didn't think this up in a boardroom, right? With a bunch of other consultants and saying, oh, we should make this or we should make that. It's really watching their wife, right, at the kitchen table and witnessing a problem in broad daylight.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, right? That your product just really needs to solve a problem. Like, what are the problems people have right now? Like, how can you do this better? How can we, like, for example, when you're thinking of projectors, right? People are like, okay, projectors, and now
think about those all the time.
Yeah, right. No. Every Saturday morning.
Every Saturday morning.
Coffee. Yeah. Think about projectors, obviously. But yeah, like projectors, they're big, bulky things. Then everyone's like, okay, let's just like put the sound system straight into it, so you don't have to have a third-party sound system. And now we're at a stage where we're like, okay, let's make this like smaller so you can put in your pocket and go somewhere and watch a movie, right? So like people are thinking about all these new different ways to solve people's problems that they've seen in the past from all the interactions they've had with previous products.
Yeah, I think it's a really good tip, and it's probably the best time to do that, and probably the easiest also, just in looking back on history, it's the easiest time when it comes to innovation and gathering a team. I think we're seeing with coronavirus just how easy it is to also work with people virtually, all those kinds of things. As it relates to crowdfunding, like kind of like my last question here, do you have any like tricks or things that aren't talked about very much publicly in the ways that people can be more successful with their campaigns?
Tricks that aren't really talked about. I think it's really just figuring out who your audience is. I know this is not one of those things that aren't talked about, but I think it's worth talking more about because people tend to forget that, and people tend to not know how to do that. Like, literally just talk to someone on the side of the road and say, hey, would you be interested in this? And would you not be interested in this, right? Like, it's just asking the questions and constantly and consistently asking the questions, showing up for yourself, showing up for your project, showing up for your product, and doing the work, because there's no trick, right? There's no trick to getting success on crowdfunding. It's creating a good product and finding people who want to buy the product and putting them together, right? It's just how you execute on those and how you like are persistently showing up that makes a difference.
Well said. Thank you so much for coming on the show, being very generous with your time and sharing some tips and ways that people can improve their projects. I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Al. This was really fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Hope you took some good value out of today's episode. As always, I'm here to help you every step of the way when it comes to launching your campaign successfully. And hopefully you've been listening to some of the other episodes out there, so you have a sense of what you got to do in order to be successful. And if you don't, if there's still some question marks in your mind, you can always book a one-on-one coaching call with me at crowdcrux.com/coaching. I'll include a link to that in the show notes. And if I don't, again, the link is crowdcrux.com/coaching. Sometimes I forget to include it, quite frankly, because I'm just doing so much stuff. But yeah, I love helping. And one of the things that is so rewarding to me is being able to see people affect other individuals. Like, I think about it, if you help one person, that's pretty cool. Like, that's an amazing experience. But then if that individual goes out there and helps like 1,000 customers with a problem, or creates something that impacts 10,000 people, it's almost like the order of magnitude that your life has is instantly compounded. I think of it as it's almost like you have this ray of light, and then you have a magnifying glass there, and almost like intensifies, right, that ray of light. And that is such a cool concept to me, because it means that through other people, I can have an even bigger impact for the positive on the world. And it's one of those things that, you talk about mission and vision for your company. And one of the visions I've always had for my life was not just wasting my life, but really wanting to impact other people, wanting to have my mark, be upon the world. And even if that's just helping other people achieve their goals so that they can then help thousands and thousands of other customers, when I go to bed at night and I think about that, I just feel so grateful to be able to have a job that enables me to do that. And so thank you very much for being a listener and for supporting my work. Appreciate it so much. Go and check out some of the other episodes I got out there, and I will see you next time.